Charlie Kelly here, local business owner and cat enthusiast. Is your cat making too much noise all the time? Is your cat constantly stomping around, driving you crazy? Is your cat clawing at your furnitures? Think there's no answer? You're so stupid. There is. Kitten mittens. Finally, there's an elegant, comfortable mitten for cats. I couldn't hear anything. Is your cat one-legged? Is your cat fat, skinny, or an in-between? That doesn't matter, because one size fits all. Kitten mittens, you'll be smitten. So come on down to Patty's Pub. We're the home of the original kitten mittens. Meow.
Hey Exiles, Chronic Painless here with the official patch 3.23 update to my Blade Vortex League starter build guide. In this video, I'm going to talk through all of the relevant changes from the patch notes and then discuss how I think BV will fare against the newly added content. First things first, we have to talk about the changes to BV itself. Overall, this was a buff. Don't be dismayed by the loss of increased critical strike chance per blade, as crit chance is one of the easiest stats to come across and we should have no problem making up the shortfall. Plus, we got higher damage numbers at the highest gem levels and an increase in hit rate from quality. These together are going to provide a very substantial boost to our DPS, though admittedly, the hit rate increase is a bit of a troll, since while it will increase our DPS, it won't increase our ability to freeze, and that is the most important thing for making this build feel good. Still, never going to be mad at more damage. The next most important gem to talk about is regular Vortex. Now obviously it no longer being an instant cast means we will not want to put it on our left click, but this really isn't that big of a deal. The main reason that we loved having Vortex on left click was that it was a reliable source of Arcane Surge, but now that Arcane Surge has been nerfed, we really aren't going to miss it all that much, and we are going to still be able to get the effect of Bone Chill by either self-casting it or putting it on a brand against beefier targets or bosses. This also opens up the possibility of making use of Cold Snap, which has several advantages over Vortex. The first being that it has a longer duration and is a little bit less visually cluttering than Vortex. Plus, it can give frenzy charges to the Elementalist, which could be very nice for that early mapping phase. There are also a couple of smaller changes worth mentioning, notably the change to Herald quality and Golem quality. We lost the increased damage from the Heralds, but getting the increased buff effect was basically like getting a set of anomalous golems for free, and so that's going to be a pretty big boon in the early parts of the league. Next, I want to talk about the removal of lab enchants. Now, anyone who has tuned into the stream or watched my videos before knows how much I harp on the importance of duration for making your BV feel good. And losing this enchantment is going to hurt. However, we really won't feel it until much later stages of the build, when the Impossible Escape version of the passive tree comes into play. Before that, we're going to be using the Duration Cluster and the Duration Mastery to give us all the duration that we need, and so it's really only at those higher budget levels, once we are past the real league start portion of the build guide, that we're going to start to need to look for alternative sources of skill duration. And thankfully there are, a few already available. The simplest of these would be anointing a skill duration notable. Of course, it's going to hurt to give up Charisma, but that is definitely an option. There's also the possibility of a Corrupt Belt implicit. This, plus the passives that are available to us through the Impossible Escape, will be enough to get us to that sweet spot of the skill duration to seal generation ratio. I'm also thinking that the new Ascendancy will be a potential option here, as we should be able to steal the duration from the Necromancer Ascendancy through those charms. And finally, there's always increased duration support, which, while a major sacrifice to our damage, could actually feel very nice from a quality of life standpoint at higher investment levels when damage is more of a luxury. I'm also hoping that there will be a transfigured version of BV that somehow plays with the duration, and I'm very excited to see what's available there. I'll obviously put out another video once all of the transfigured gems are revealed, going over which one I think might be the best for the build. As for losing alternate quality gems, the biggest one we're going to feel is Anomalous Herald of Purity. This was a big deal for the Occultist, as losing that taunt from the Stone Golem when making the swap often felt pretty bad, but the Anomalous Heralds of Purity were exceptional in this regard, providing that great meat shield. And speaking of meat shield, that's how we're going to answer this nerf. We're going to have to go ahead and throw a meat shield support onto our Heralds of Purity. This doesn't increase the reservation all that much, and when you consider that we can counteract this with the Herald nodes on the tree, or even a Circle of Guilt with Herald reservation efficiency for Herald of Purity, it's not going to be a big deal in order to get that taunt going again. The other alternate quality gem that we're going to miss the most is Anomalist BV. This was by far the best option for Life Leech in terms of opportunity cost, only requiring us to give up that little bit of AoE on the BV. But now that we have a hit rate from quality anyway, we're going to have a much harder time giving that up. So it's really not that bad when you consider that there are many other sources of lifesteal. Of course, we have the Doriani's Lesson Notable from the Cluster Jewel. We have Doriani's Belt. We have Helm implicits. We have Amulet implicits and explicits. There are a lot of options here. So it really shouldn't be too hard to find another source of lifesteal to slot into your build when you're ready to make the swap to Occultist. Moving on, I want to touch quickly on the nerf to Heatshiver, though this was, definitely not part of the league start version of the build, something that we wanted to add much later. It is going to affect our POB DPS, but as I've discussed in previous videos regarding Heatshiver, this usually does not matter, right? We don't really care how much damage a frozen target is taking because it will stay frozen until it's dead. The only fights where this really matters were bosses, and especially bosses like Lycia, where the difference of that damage could be the difference between skipping her lightning phase or having to deal with it. Overall though, this was mostly just luxury damage and vanity damage for POB's sake, so we really won't feel all that much impact if we do wind up wanting to run a Heatshiver in later versions of the build, as it will still be a pretty strong option for bumping up that DPS. That covers the changes, so now let's talk about the new content. For the Affliction League, I think BV is going to be very well suited because, as I've discussed in previous videos, we love it when the monsters spawn right on top of us. And GGG has confirmed that the monsters won't be attacking us from the fog, from the off-screen, from the darkness. We're only going to be fighting in that very small illuminated area, and this is going to mean our BV will have a great time, as we are just going to be covering the entire combat zone with a Circle of Death. The same will more or less be true of Ultimatum League, though the arena is definitely bigger. There are ways to make it smaller, including on the Atlas passive tree, and we should have no problem just covering the area between ourselves and our Veil BV as the waves get tougher, so we should be able to claim a whole lot of very nice ultimatum rewards. As for the borrowed power of the new ascendancies, to me it's kind of a no-brainer that the Primalist is going to be the best option here. I know that's probably not very controversial to say. A lot of people are going to be targeting this, especially given how easy it is to get it going, right? It's not a very big brain ascendancy here. You just throw in the charms, your build gets stronger. For us, though, it's especially attractive because this is going to be one of the ways to potentially make up for that duration loss from the lab enchant, and is also potentially going to be a source of things like Tailwind, Elusive, more power charges, maybe even more max golems, right? We'll have to see how those mods scale to see what's worth targeting, what's worth giving up, and I'm really excited to play around with that in POB once we have the full data. The other ascendancies are much less attractive, right? For the Warlock, the blood magic route is not really an option for us, given that we are more or less an aura stacker, right? You would need to be running some sort of energy shield version of the build, and that is really not what you're going to want to be doing to make the most of that ascendancy. So, I think this is just going to be a non-starter unless you're running a very different version of BV. And the curse route is also not that attractive because we already gain a lot from the curses that we use, and having to fit in extra curses or giving up Assassin's Mark to use the new mark, right? That's not going to be something that we want to do. And for the Warden of the Magi, obviously we can't take advantage of Tincture since we're not hitting with our weapons, and the rest of it is pretty much defensive based. And while this will be fine for anyone who wants to be super tanky, I'm not going to be very excited about that. But that being said, right, the bark skin does seem pretty cool if you do want to go for that beefy boy route. That's all I've got for this video. I'm hoping to get another short video out for the actual launch of the league once we have a little more information about the new gems and maybe some of the new numbers have been imported into POB. And you can always join the Discord for more BV discussion. And as always, try to stay painless.